The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Edessa Paulzine, and again, thank you for attending this month's webinar. We will be getting started in the half hour, but before we start, I would like to direct you to your control panel where you will find your questions pane. Please use the questions pane. If you have any questions or comments during the webinar, or if you experience any technical issues. Again, we will be getting started at the half hour, so sit tight. Hello again, everyone. I'm Edessa Paulzine. I'm the Sales and Marketing Coordinator at WebCourseWorks, and I'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar. We have reached the half hour, and we will be getting started with our webinar for today. But first, I'd like to thank our community for their partnership with us. Our community connects association executives and industry partners through online discussion forums, programs, and webinars. We encourage you to subscribe to our community for even more online and live education programming and fulfill all your annual CAE requirements in one place. We also have an upcoming event in DC on November 5th. It's an association content development workshop, creating effective knowledge checks using Articulate Storyline 360. The registration link is down below, and if you use discount code Carnegie, you will get half off the registration.
Okay, Edessa, thank you. I'm John Alexson, and I'm excited to be a part of this Managing eLearning Thought Leaders series. And I'm particularly excited to introduce a longtime friend of mine. I met the speaker earlier part of the century, and Clark and I have done a number of projects together. Unfortunately, most of them are on the cutting edge, maybe bleeding edge. But what I think is exciting about today's discussion with Clark is that he has settled into a very cost-effective way to create simulations or branching scenarios. He calls them short sims. Clark Aldrich solves education's biggest problems, and he does work. He's a practitioner. He works for corporations, universities, foundations. Most recently, Clark has reinvented educational content with an interactive model that is both cheaper and better, rendering older approaches obsolete. He currently develops custom short sims for all types of organizations. The other thing I'd like to point out about Clark, and we'll get right to him, is that he is a prolific writer and has a number of books. And I really positioned Clark as an early pundit of game-based learning. I know we call it gamification today, but he's written the Bible, which is called The Complete Guide to Simulations and Games. So, Clark, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here and to go through this. And please, everyone, ask lots of questions. This will be a lot more fun the more interactive it is, and ask them in your chat window. Great. So I think you're seeing my screen right now. Please ask questions in the chat window, and then we can answer them and we can go through them. Do not hold your answers till the end. By all means, please interrupt, violently disagree if you have to. So we're going to be talking about pretty interesting stuff right now. We'll start a little simple, but we'll get pretty cool by the time we're done. So one place I like to start this conversation is sort of back on May 1st, 2002, when a book was published called Telling Ain't Training. And it was just a very kind of gentle reminder to the training industry that classrooms, and you can sit there and you can talk to your students, but that's not really doing any educating. That's not doing any building convictions or competence. That's sort of talking at them. And so there's this notion, a reminder back then that we needed to do things like active learning, like role playing, like learning by doing. We need to do all this stuff. And it was a lesson that needed to be refreshed at the time. Simultaneously, you have things like Harvard Business School, who was doing things like case study methodology and advocating it to more and more people. So there's sort of a realization that linear content is pretty bad. It doesn't really work. And there's a bunch of cognitive reasons for it. I'll go into it if anyone asks, but I'm sure not going to if they don't. But when you look at most interactivity in online content today, and a huge amount of content is online, you know, the things that you can do, go forward, go backwards, drag and drop, maybe take a little test, and maybe take notes. It's still very didactic. Content today would fail at most reviews from 2 decades ago, and so we're kind of we were in a bad place when it came to this stuff. So what I came up with through a bunch of work and role modeling with different organizations is this concept called short sims. And these short sims, and I'll show you plenty of examples, are short micro learning experiences. They're very short, and you know, they tend to be 7-10 minutes long, maybe 12 minutes long, not necessarily more than that. But they're focused on decision making, and consequences, on failing, on replaying, on building and experimenting. All these things that we knew 20 years ago we needed to do to actually have people learn anything. And they're doing it so in a way that's ruthlessly distilled to their pedagogical essence for low cost, low development time and short user time, because again, I certainly did a lot of stuff in terms of more complex computer game like experiences, and they're great, they're very powerful, but they take a long time. And increasingly I've learned that the cardinal rule of all educational content is make it simple and direct but still meaningful. And if you can pull off those two things, then you can make everyone happy. So I want to start by giving an example, because again, talking about this stuff in abstract is absolutely no fun at all. So here's a moment from a sim, but I think it's a pretty good standalone example of a short sim. So here it is. So imagine it's Monday afternoon. Suppose you can earn $10 an hour. Instead of working, you decide to rent a 2-hour movie for $5. How much does watching that movie cost you? Is it $5 or is it $25? So most people in the world say, oh, it's $5. Oh, no, wait, it's $25. You know, it takes about 3 seconds to go through the two lists. If it was an open-ended question, people might type in 5 and move on. But by giving two different choices here, the obvious intuitive newbie choice of 5, and then sort of the economic Adam Smith 101 thing of 25, it allows people instantaneously to kind of come up with their own theory of opportunity cost. And so I don't have to spend, if I'm designing a course, and this is a moment from a course, I don't have to spend a lot of time explaining opportunity cost much more than that. I just have to give them this one little moment and they invent their own theory. And something I just love doing as much as possible is giving someone the setup and letting them create their own theory. Now they can get it wrong, in which case we might explain to them a little bit or make them think a little more. But it's sort of that moment, which to me is what, you know, what I like to do in these things. So let me give you another slightly more interesting example called Be the Hacker. And so this is one I did for a cybersecurity program. So we're gonna start off with a friendly little guy here. Let's do a thought experiment. Let's say you and I are hackers, and we want to steal some money. And so again, sure, that's great. Let's be bad guys. I'm into this. Great. For the sake of the simulation, say I have stolen someone's password and we've broken into their active bank account. They have $1,000 in it. How much should we steal? So that's the setup. It's a pretty basic setup. There's not a lot of, there's not a lot of graphics here. Obviously, it's just a stock person in a stock background, but it's kind of a somewhat interesting situation. You want to steal $500, $1,000, $50 or nothing. We give people the nothing option because I never ever like to force people to be immoral, and we can talk people through their concern of, I really don't want to steal money, and that's fine. So again, never ever force anyone to be immoral in a simulation, no matter how much fun it is. But that doesn't mean you can't coax them to be immoral, and which is what I like to do all the time. So in this case, okay, so we have our options. Most people either choose $500 or $1,000. So let's do $1,000, go all in. $1,000, great, we stole $1,000. The user changed their password, but it's a pretty good haul, right? Yeah, absolutely, great haul. I'm really happy. Okay, you stole $1,000, which isn't bad, but we could have gotten even more money. Could have gotten more than $1,000. And now again, give people a choice. Love giving people choices. All right, I'm gonna try again. Okay, so we have $1,000. What do you want to do? Well, now we can think about that. Well, I don't want to steal 500. So a lot of people now kind of get down to, maybe I'll just steal $50, because that's the only other choice I have, really. You know, I don't really know why, but I want to play around with that. Great, we stole $50. The user didn't seem to notice. Now what should we do? Really important information there. The user didn't seem to notice. And so again, you can play through things, but okay, well, let's wait a month. Okay, we waited a month. Now how much do you want to steal? Do you want to go for all of it again, or no? Let's just keep our little strategy. Okay, we stole. So now we are $100 in. The user didn't seem to notice this time either. Now what do you want to do? And now we're going to wait another month. Okay, so the strategy is to steal a small amount every month. You got it. Excellent. So now you can go on for a long time doing this if you're a cybersecurity or a credit card company. You can start making a little bit of money. And in this case, in just 3 years, you would make over $1,800. Isn't that great? And so that's the lesson here. If you're a cyber criminal, your goal is often to do is to steal a tiny bit at a time. Now, I show this a lot of different groups, and the only people who ever get it right initially are people who actually have cybersecurity experience, who say, "Oh wait, do a small amount," so the user doesn't notice. So, but it's a nice example. It's a nice example of what I think of as a short sim, which is this very short experience. It kind of looks like a branching story, but it's not. The setup is a little different. In this case, the network underneath it, the algorithm the nodes that I use to build this is only this long. It's actually 24 nodes. It's 25 because it's one off. But so here's this very, very short thing. And by the way, most of the 16 through 20 are just there to help people if they don't want to be a bad guy, which is totally fine. And I sort of walk them through the process. But if they don't want to be a bad guy, I'm not going to make them. But so it's a very, very short sim. It took hardly any time at all to create it. And it was based, again, I was interviewing a subject matter expert, and they kind of gave me the story. I'm like, hey, great, I'm going to run with that. And that's going to be part of this course. But it teaches you, and it uses you, the player, as the lab, which is always great, and it kind of trusts you to play around a bit, and hopefully it entices you to replay it. Most people who do the sim will replay it 2 or 3 times or 4 times on their own. We don't even have to ask them. So short sims are really, really good to teach predictable processes, to teach dynamic processes, present simple role plays, present complicated role plays, get people thinking of things in a new way, which is sort of a good example there, and allow them to explore interesting systems, and in some cases be involved in some even complicated and ongoing case studies. Any questions at this point before we move on? And do it in the chat room, and we can talk through some of them.
There are no questions currently, Clark, so I think you're good to go.
It's a very bad sign. Okay, I'm very concerned at this point. John, you must have something to say. Snarky, undermining, undercutting of some kind.
Yeah. Not at this point, Clark.
Okay, thanks. Also good for assessment, by the way. And again, often at the same time, we can do a bunch of these things simultaneously. So I'll give you another very simple example. This is one it's a little more focused. You're a salesperson, your goal, this is done for Oracle, and your goal is to visit 2 long-time database customers and strengthen the relationship. Great, so we're gonna head over to client side. Great, I'm so sorry I had you come over. My boss just texted me and wants me at our offsite. It's just crazy here. Can we reschedule the meeting? So again, if you're a salesperson, this is always a bad moment when you get there and they're like, hey, can we reschedule? But let's ask a little question. What's going on? Well, we just acquired a small company for our new fintech offering. That's financial technology. Excellent. And I'm in charge of mobile apps for their merged group. So I'm going to be developing mobile apps. There's a ton of legacy stuff, but also a ton of new apps to design. Congratulations, that's great. Unfortunately, to cut our budgets by 12%, so it brings us to Oracle. What can I tell my boss about why I need you instead of going completely to Amazon Web Services? So again, if you're a salesperson, this is your nightmare. This person wants to leave. So now in this case, you have time to bring up one point about the Oracle Cloud. Based on her situation, what will it be? Are you going to talk about infrastructure as a service, autonomous database, platform as a service, or software as a service? And then again, that's basically the sim. It's a very short moment. Actually, it's part of a larger sim, but I wanted to just show you one little moment there. And so right now, if you're a salesperson, you care a lot about this stuff suddenly, and it's a really kind of interesting question. You have these terms. Hopefully, most of us have no clue what the difference is between the two, or between the 4. I'm sorry. But again, if we've done a bit of training, whatever, we can do this to prompt training. And now again, I'm going to say. Infrastructure as a service, say you share the Oracle Cloud provides infrastructure similar to Amazon's without the hidden costs. Okay, so that's there. It's a pretty low term thing. That will be important. Okay, make sure Oracle. So the answer is fine. It was a pretty good answer, but you could have done better. And so this is sort of a review of it. So that's all it is, and it's a very, very simple kind of engagement. But it gets all of the salespeople thinking about the importance of this. Again, it's a very simple example. It took, I think 2 hours to pull that together just for a demonstration. But it's the kind of thing where the entire simulation is based around that one point of concern. Here are a bunch of different options. Which one do you want? And it forces people to think about it and to care about it. So the process. Again, as John said, one thing that I really like about short sims is, again, it makes both students happy and sponsors happy, which is something I always like to try to do both of. And one reason why it makes sponsors happy is because it's a pretty fast process to create a good short sim. There's the research and concept stage, there's the interface design, there's once you do all the logic design and then refining. For a 1-level sim, like we saw with the Be the Hacker sim, it's about 3 hours of, in this case, talking to people and getting a bit of interview, maybe a little less in this case. Kind of trying to think about it and put it together, 12 hours. Most of the sims that I do are more like 7 or 8 or 9 levels, so they're between these two. So it's about 40 or 41 hours. But what it really means is that you can have one designer making one short sim per week, and it's a really nice rate because you can really cover a lot of content that way. So again, so there are 2 questions. Yeah, so here's a good time. Please ask the question.
Yeah, so I think you just answered the first question. The first question was from Chris Jones, and he asked, when you say it didn't take long to create that hacker sim, how much time was that? And I guess that we're on that page right now. And then the second question is from Jennifer Cannon. She's asking, I do mostly product training, which can be very dry and technical. How can I work Sims into product training without sacrificing all the info from the SMEs and the AEs that they want in there?
That's a fabulous example. I think short sims are absolutely perfect for product training because we can take people, we can use screenshots cleverly, and we can walk people through the product. We can simulate the functionality in a very easy way, so we can have people do things on it and then experiment, and then try things and then provide feedback. So I'm not sure if I have a great example here. If you send me an email address, I can get you sort of a couple of very perfect examples. But a lot of the stuff that I actually did with John and Web Courseworks, great company by the way, love them, is some very process-centric things that people are going through processes with a goal in mind, and again making mistakes, but giving feedback as to why is a mistake a mistake. One of the most important things again is not just saying, oh, you made a mistake, but if you did this, if you were using this program and you did this, here's the bad thing that would happen, and then rewind it and let's try and make a different choice. So right. It's actually perfect for it. Yes, John.
Clark, yeah, that was a great question, and it really gets at the essence of the first book you showed about telling and training, and what I like to recommend, and I know you do too, is that if you put these short sims up front in your training, and you start to look at creative ways to get the didactic material to the learner, so they're having more fun testing their knowledge and making decisions in the sims, and they're doing less online reading. What type of creative ways have you seen where that didactic telling portion, the sage on the stage portion, is delivered in a different manner than just online reading?
Well, first of all, exactly as you say, you can put up a sim at the beginning of it, and once you go through the sim, you then are much more primed, much more receptive to content. I think even more specifically, though, is you put the didactic content around simulation decisions. So you can say, you want to do X, you want to build this product, or you want to do something. Here's your decisions. You do A, B, or C. And then your D question is, but by the way, would you like to learn a little more about these options? Or would you like me to define some terms? Or would you like me to understand the color coding, whatever? And so you can ask questions, you can ask the user to want information, not just shove it at them, but create a situation where the learner pulls the information towards them by asking for it. If someone asks for information, they love it. If someone doesn't ask for information, they get it. It's what I call kind of the whole wheat theory of education, which is if you're at a restaurant and you're ordering a sandwich and you by mistake get whole wheat bread instead of white bread, you kind of get really mad, and it's like, oh, this really stinks, I hate this. But if you ask for whole wheat bread and you get it, you feel very virtuous. You feel like, hey, I'm doing good stuff for my health, and so you're much more happy with that whole wheat sandwich. Information is the same way. If you're forced to learn something, if information is shoved at you, you can get very resentful of it, and you really start hating it, and you start spacing out. But if you ask for that information, first of all, you feel good. But also, again, you get it at the moment that you need it. The other thing that's really important to note is typically older audiences tend to like the information, the data dump beforehand, so they don't make mistakes. But as you get younger, the kids really don't mind making mistakes. In fact, they'd much rather make mistakes, especially in a safe environment. And then if they do make a mistake, that's when they want to learn their lesson. But they'd much rather experiment first, then get told the answer, rather than be told the answer of an experiment. So it's another way of just allowing people to screw around. The other thing too, as you said, is if you can get people to teach themselves something, it's a lot more fun and a lot more powerful. And so as often as possible, having people figure things out on their own. And then perhaps the third thing for some products, or fourth thing for some products, is having them kind of create something on their own. So, as much as using a fairly linear short sim to teach how to use some product, as much as possible, if you can say, well, you want to build something, here are 3 different things you can build, or you want to create a little solution, and giving them some little solution, and then creating 3 or 4 different branches they can go off of to learn the same material, then there's at least some fun of authoring, especially if different things take it down different directions. So there's a lot of ways of doing it that make it a lot more fun. John, anything else?
There we have more questions coming your way, Clark.
I'm so happy.
The next question is from David McCool. He's asking, roughly how long is the playtime of a level?
It's a good question. About 7 minutes in general. I mean, a six level sim is probably about 7 minutes. And that's really important too, because in nonlinear content, you want replayability. So in that Oracle example, you kind of want someone to try different. If they don't get it right the first time, they can try different answers. Same thing with the Be the Hacker sim, where it's fun to try things a couple different times to get different solutions. Where things are, where you want replayability, and you really want to make sure the sim itself takes less than 10 minutes, or else people will not replay it no matter how enticed they are. In a more linear sim, then you may not get that replayability factor, but it's still going to be, again, about, so 6 levels is about 8 minutes.
Okay, last question for right now is from Robert. He's asking, is there a flowchart for the logic and interface build-out process that you can recommend when building sims?
The short answer is yes. I'll talk a little bit through it today, and then if you want to email me or John afterwards, I can send you some more specific documentation. I just turned in the manuscript for my next book called Short Sims, and so obviously I can send you a little piece of that if you want it. But I will like to go, thanks for the setup there, I would like to go into a little bit about that process now. So the first part of the process, once you understand the topic, is interviewing subject matter experts. And I always have 3 questions for them. The first question is the simplest one. Do you mind if I record this? Because it's really important to ask them for that. But it also is a backdoor way of getting, I always record the conversations with their permission, of course. I listen to their conversations 5 or 7 times afterwards. So I love the process of interviewing subject matter experts, of which John is a better expert at interviewing them than I am, but I have my own more clumsy way, and I think it works pretty well for short sims, if not for everything. So first question, do you mind if I record this? The second question is, what are the right ways of doing this? For anything, for leadership, if you're doing directive leadership or you're doing collaborative leadership, what is the right way of doing it? So that's really important. And then, what are common mistakes made in this area? And so that's my favorite question of all. If I can only ask an expert one question, is what are common mistakes made in this area? So that's the question that I love to focus people on. That's the single thing, because that gets to choices. And once again, the real sin of traditional content is it's linear. The smallest bit of content is a presentation of information, which stinks. The nice thing about short sims is the smallest piece of content is an interaction. It is a decision you have to make. And once you start thinking about decisions as the smallest piece of content, then you as a designer are just looking all the time for what are mistakes? Why do people make mistakes? So then the sub bullets underneath all of this stuff is what happens when wrong decisions are made. I love showing the consequences of bad behavior. And one thing that we do in this area is sort of try to build conviction. And a quick example of conviction: if you're driving down the highway and you're driving too fast and the police pull you over, you get mad, it ruins your day, snort, snort, snort. But you don't really learn your lesson. It's sort of like, oh, I should have known that there'd be a speed trap in this time of day. And so you go with all the rationalization because it's extrinsic feedback. But if you're driving too fast and you hit a patch of ice and you lose control of the car and you feel this car moving in the direction you don't want it to go, that's the real consequence of driving too fast. And once that happens, you never drive fast again. And by the way, if you're with someone who is driving too fast, you tell them to slow down. You don't worry about the social negative of it. You do, because you've learned conviction. And so that's one of the great things about short sims, is as much as possible, not just showing people the wrong decisions they make, but showing them the consequences of the wrong decisions. Not the extrinsic, you broke a rule, but the intrinsic of here's the bad thing that happened. Number 2, what are tricky situations that may confuse newbies or experienced practitioners? What situations would result in participants asking questions of colleagues? What are mistakes people make without realizing they're making mistakes? So really interesting kind of questions. And what are different outcomes in this area, good or bad? And again, why do people make mistakes? So it's all around this issue of why do people make mistakes? Then, so part 2 of the process, after you ask the experts, after you interview the experts, is you start organizing. And I look at these bits I look at actions, decisions, goals, challenges, solutions, mistakes, and consequences. These are my building blocks. And so, when I'm throwing them together, I could color code them. I actually don't really in real life, but for illustrative purposes, I may do it. But I take notes directly into any authoring environment. This one happens to be branch track, but there's a bunch of very good ones. So I will take the notes, from these things, and I'll create like little note cards, and I'll throw them all together, and then I'll start organizing them I'll start organizing these into a structure. So as you're creating, one of the hardest things to do and one of the most important things to do is creating a self-evident setting interface. What's the situation? Again, not unlikely to be the hacker, where almost the situation itself does a tremendous amount of the teaching. So what's the situation that a smart person can look at and say, oh yeah, I get it, I understand the connection. Can make all stories bear. So again, I hate words. My approach to doing short sims is like Twitter. If I can get it down to 140 characters, or that's old Twitter, but that's great, do it. So have a war on words. I mean, the old generation, including myself, are far too wordy. How do you streamline it as much as possible? Keep all names and backstories lean. Have some fun characters. So even though you want to have lean stories, you can still have a bit of character involved. Use levels and rigorous level design. So have 1, 2, 3, 4 levels, having each level get a little harder than the level before it. So again, people are teaching themselves the content as much as possible. If you're teaching a product, maybe give them have 3 different levels and either different parts of the product they're trying to understand, or using the same product, slightly more complicated each time. The other thing that I really like to do, and a big change from the traditional branching stories that I sort of inherited, is using a coach character, having a person there who's sort of the primary interface. We saw that in both of those 2 sims, but having the coach character be a friend. And again, I hate trying to, I like having the coach character be a pal, be someone who is on your side. I often think of sort of the old Iron Man Jarvis character who's saying, I'm here to help you, and or in Bertie Wooster series, the Jeeves character. And when young Bertie Wooster wants to do something really, really stupid, the butler does not say, no, you cannot do it, I forbid you. The butler goes, very good, sir. In other words, it's a massive mistake. I don't have the power to stop you from doing it, but I am here to clean up the mess that you make. And I think that's the role for the coach, is to provide a bit of feedback. Sir, you can't do that, but ultimately say very good, sir, and let people make mistakes all they want, and just be there to clean up the messes. And keep words to a minimum. Entice but never force the player to be immoral or to make mistakes. So again, we're there to seduce people, but we're not there to blindside them. We don't take any cheap shots. We do want to create a safe space where people don't feel like they're blindsided, unless we want to entice them to make a mistake and then blindside them, but only if that mistake is an authentic one they would really make in the real world, not something that they've been tricked to do. And again, allow people to teach themselves as much as possible. Trust people to teach themselves in the right setting, and also allow people to ask for more. So I love having, if it's a hard level, if it's a really hard situation at the end of the sim, I love saying, hey, great, you finished the sim, good job. Oh, by the way, there's one more level, it's sort of the advanced level, it's the expert level, but don't worry about it. You finished the sim, congratulations. And then like 90% of the time, you get someone the option of saying, wait a minute, I want to see that last level. Then they will click on it, and it's a very high percentage of the time. And if they don't, figure out, you lost them anyway. But again, like the whole wheat bread, allow people to ask for more, allow people to be good, and you'll be amazed at how good people are if you do a good job in creating the tone. And so I look at those voluntary steps as really important. You can't do that with mandatory certification content, but you can do that a lot more than perhaps you think. At the same time, avoid or plan for time sucks. There are authoring systems that use extensive formatting that really scare me. As I like to say, if you're going to read the next Harry Potter book, you want Rawlings to have written it on a word processor, not on a page layout program. And a lot of traditional authoring tools feel more like page layout programs, and you want an authoring tool that allows people to focus on the writing and the creation, not on the formatting. Keeping the number of stakeholders down to less than 4 is really good. Obviously, you want to keep consistency of decision makers. You don't want them to switch mid-project. In some environments, best practices are not defined, and so you have to do that, which is fine and a totally wonderful process. But that's going to ruin, the leanness of the chart I showed you before. Is if you have to actually figure out the answers, which is again a separate research project. Again, it was always a battle against custom art. I love using custom art, and I'll show you an example of it. But if there's not a pedagogical reason, if it's just for Flash, then it's probably gonna add a lot more time. Again, managing versions. And also, one of the things too, as you're looking at your own portfolio, and I'm certainly hoping that all of you turn yourselves into short sim experts internally within your own organizations. And one of them, again, is content without context. So in some context, so again, in middle school language, things like, learn the water cycle. Well, it's hard, it's one thing that short sims don't do necessarily a great job at, is saying, here's how a water cycle works, learn it. If there's not someone doing the doing, then it can get a little, then you can start contorting a little bit. And by the way, it's still very possible, but you really do have to think in terms of actions and decisions, which if you're showing kind of a passive chart, sometimes it's hard to figure out who is doing the doing. Questions there on either of these two slides?
And not specifically on the two slides, but we do have two questions. The first one is from David, and he's asking, what level of production values do short sims need to get higher user engagement? Does the lack of higher production values have a negative impact on the user experience, and how do you even measure that?
Okay, so let me take that one. So in terms of measurement, you measure completion rate like you do all the time. You measure dropout rate. You measure. I measure replayability. So for any kind of open-ended sim, if I hit less than 3 replays, then I'm kind of feeling like it's been a failure. I think the production values have to be focused on the writing and the interactions, the clicks people make. So there's terrific pressure in a good way on creating interesting decisions people are making, interesting feedback, and that's where all the things make. The more production value you add to it, oftentimes the less smooth you can make it, the less refining you can make of the dialogue and of the engagement. So I would focus a lot more on that. Having said that, there are plenty of reasons why you absolutely need custom art, like in teaching someone how to use a product, and that's absolutely fine too. But I think we get overly focused on the shiny things, and I think there's the detriment. The other thing too is, again, I'm really focused on speed, and I think we as an e-learning industry have failed if we spend too long trying to create content. And so the notion of how do you get one person creating one sim once a week is a really good target goal. And you almost do anything you do that. Once you do that, then you can be incredibly productive. You can produce a lot of content, and so and the content can be fun and spirited. But once you start slowing that down, then suddenly you get scope creep. You bow down your own processes considerably. I am going to show you one example. Yeah, so let me show you one example. And again, I know there's one more question after this, but so keep that question there. But here's an example of what I think to be a really good level of production. So this is, again, this is for something the Gates Foundation did, hired me for regarding demand curves. So we're going to play with demand curves. Okay, so consider a food truck that is selling drinks. And so you have two choices, and again, wouldn't that be a beverage truck? And no, it actually wouldn't. So again, I love giving people the ability to be a little snarky to the poor coach. I guess I hate coaches. So you have the ability to lower and raise prices of the drinks sold. So we have a little thing. This is all clip art, by the way. This is all, this is just off-the-shelf clip art. And I use PowerPoint as my graphic engine to boo his, but it really works well. The price for the drink is currently 50 cents. Raise the price now to $1.50. Okay, so here's a situation. We can do nothing. We can raise the price. Once again, I had to teach demand curves. And so part of the hard thing was saying, what's a great situation that makes people think of demand curves? And so again, I chose selling drinks. So I'm gonna raise the price by 50 cents to $1. Look, we see the sign change, $1. Again, it's all done using clip art. Okay, the price is now $1. Keep going, raise the price now to $1.50, so we can lower the price. Nope, actually let's raise it. Okay, so we raise the price. We're gonna raise the price to $1.50. Good job. Let's throw in some customers. As with the real world, the customers are price sensitive. Okay, so we're careful. Good. So now, bang, we have some customers. And oh yeah, by the way, I threw in a demand curve there. Hopefully no one will notice, but if you do, you can ask about that. So once again, see what happens when you raise the price from $1.50 to $2.50. So if you can do nothing, nothing's happening. Okay, we're gonna raise the price. Oh wow, someone's leaving. It's my little cartoon lines to show someone leaving. We can lower the price. We can lower the price. We get that person back. We can raise the price. We can raise the price again. Great, so you can see now, and again, it's a self-evident situation. We have people in line as a substitute as a stand-in for demand. It's all very, very intuitive. Drink, raise the price, blah, blah. So good job, quantity of demand went down from to 3 at $2.50. So now we see that we can look at the chart and say, okay, well, that's what that means. At this time, at $2.50 on a cloudy day, if you charge $2.50, you only get demand, it will equal 3. Okay, so now we're gonna lower the price down. Okay, so now saying one more thing you can do in this scenario is wait for the sun to come out if it's cloudy, or you can wait for the clouds if it's sunny. So we're giving people one more option. So we're gonna wait for the clouds to come out. And look, at the same price level, when the sun comes out, you get more people wanting a drink. We can wait for clouds, wait for the sun. So one thing I love doing is just, someone can just click back and forth and kind of, get the hang of it and see the chart. And by the way, the chart is now, I love having, here's a little chart that changes in real time. So it's kind of like a little mini map in the game. Okay, got it. And so again, what does the term demand mean? Okay, so I can now ask for the information. I can pull the information towards me. But also I just, I use the term, I try to use the term quantity demand without defining it, let people ask for it if they want it, but also getting them comfortable with intent. Okay, got it. So now here's your goal. So we're gonna end this little thing with a little test. Here's your goal. You have to find the market conditions where there are exactly 7 people who will buy a drink. You can change the weather and the price as you've done. So again, we have level 1 where someone learns how to use the interface very simply, very organically, and there's a little map. Okay, so I want to create a situation where, so my goal is to find a situation where there are exactly 7 people who will buy a drink. Okay, so I can raise the price. Basically I'm going to play with this. It's just a little lab right now. I can raise the price. I can raise the price. And so, one goal of mine right now is to raise the price. One goal of mine right now is to get the right answer, which is 7. But another goal is just sort of play around with it. So here's a little lab. It's an open-ended lab. And it turns out, okay, I'm going to lower the price, lower the price, and I can mess around a little bit. It's all very clear. The other really important thing about this is I'm teaching the demand curve, but I'm not focusing primarily on the demand curve. It's sort of off to the side. So once again, I want people to look at the demand curve and want it and pull that information towards them. The demand curve is the secret ingredient. The demand curve is how they're going to solve this problem. So they are pulling the demand curve to them in order to do it. Now, if I wait for the sun to come out, wait a minute, okay, so lower the price. Okay, so that's the number, then I have the mission accomplished thing pulling out. And, and that's it. So it's incredibly, again, it's not a super, the graphics are really important. You couldn't do that without the graphics. It's a nice example of graphics. Again, it's all clip art, it's all PowerPoint driven, but it allows for an incredibly thing. The nice thing about this approach too is it turned out the first version of this chart, I had a 2-dimensional graphic and sort of black against white, which I really liked. And the client said, nah, let's do 3D instead. And so, literally in 2 hours that afternoon, I went and I sort of refigured out the graphics, got rid of, and using the exact same PowerPoint slides, so I could keep all the chart, I sort of put in new graphics. So I could change it, I could turn around, I didn't have to bring the artist back in or find a new artist. I could just do it, basically in the afternoon and turn around to the client and say they're done. The chart, the guts of this program, again, are very simple. It was not overly complicated, but it's sort of a nice, clean example of, of how I like to use graphics, which is if you have to use them, obviously use them, but doing them in sort of a clip-arty way. So let's get back to the second question that I skipped over because I want to use
Yes, the second question is, what type of rubrics are available to assess the learning that has taken place? Many experts say that it's almost impossible. But however, in using within a university business school, the dean wants to know what the learners have learned. So how do you measure that?
Sure, and there's a bunch of different ways. I mean, the cheap and easy way is to build an assessment sim at the end of this. And so if I'm doing a course, if I'm doing a simulation on blankety blank, I can build out an assessment sim at the end of the product. Now there's good and bad to that. The good is that you have total control over it. You can create it, and you can make it something that you can use. You can put a person who didn't go through the sim through that assessment, and you can put someone who did do the sim assessment. So you can measure it, and also you can check yourself, because again, we all want to make good products, and so we can have a bunch of interesting questions and see how people do with the information. The pushback there, which is totally justified, and I'd be the first to do that as well, saying, well, that's pretty good. That's not a bad, intermediate step, but the more important thing is that someone acts better in the real world. And so, that's where you have to say, well, okay, we're still going to do case studies in a business school situation, or we're going to, have real world job performance. And, I can provide the front end of here's how the person did in the sim. And if you give me the back end of, and here's how the person did in the real world, we can start creating correlations between them, and then we can start doing measurements. So the within the sim simulation, within the sim assessment is the best way of ticking off one box. It doesn't get you all the way there, it gets you halfway there, but it does in some cases, show you that certainly some behaviors learn. But inevitably, you're going to have to then drift into the real world. Now you can do focus group studies afterwards as well. I mean, short sims don't solve the problem or the challenge or the effort of doing level 3 or level 4 analysis, but it does provide you an absolutely completely trackable, and by trackable, and again, John can talk a bit more about this, but we can use XAPI standards underneath it, and we can track every single thing about it. And so we can say, you went from the sim and now you did the thing that we taught you not to do. Well, we can at least see how you did in the sim, and if you did the sim perfectly and you learned everything perfectly and you still made the mistake, then shame on us, and we did a bad job, and we have to rework that. But at the same time, if more people made a mistake who didn't go through the sim than did go through the sim, then you can do it. The other thing you can do, again, is if you're teaching someone, case study methodology or something, you can present those sims, and then you can have the person perform in case studies, and you can ask the professor, stack rank how or have other, there's methodologies of evaluating, in this case, say business school students' performances in case studies, and you can say, did the people who went through this the short sim or the 3 or 4 short sims on preparation for case studies, did they do better or not? And so you can measure those objectively. John, what am I missing here? Okay, so there's a lot of ways. I mean, there's terrific metrics involved and terrific tracking done, and especially using XAPI standards to do this. But it doesn't solve the problem of the transition to the real world. I would argue that simulations are much better at preparing people for the real world, but at some point you still have to put pointers in, and you still have to measure the real world in order to correlate it, to do regressive analysis with it.
Okay, there's one more question.
Excellent.
I can sneak it in there. What advice do you have to move SMEs from wanting to stick with linear didactic content to designing for short sims?
Let me hold off on that one for just a minute, because I think I'm going to get to that, because I think it's a really great question and probably one of my favorite ones. Okay. So one thing to think about as you are, again, I'm hoping everyone here goes home and starts building short sims and works in your own culture to start producing short sims. So one thing that you should test yourself, a self-test, is, let's say you're doing a salesperson training. Do you have the student try to sell to a typical customer, and that is good for competence developing. Have the student try to sell to an edge case customer, a wacky customer, a customer who's unusual, which teaches both competence and conviction, or have the student be the customer and put the student in the simulation in the role of being the customer, which is great for teaching conviction, but not necessarily competence of the sales process. And so it's a really interesting thing, because most people, when they start off, are around 1.5. They're kind of halfway between 1 and 2. But typically, as cultures get better at doing short sim deployment, they start moving up to about 2.2 or 2.5 in terms of the average sim. So they work on sort of making things sort of typical and normal, and then they start pushing a little bit. And again, these tend to be a little more fun, having student be the customer and deal with the salesperson in the simulation. That teaches the salesperson obviously empathy and what the student is going through. I'm actually, how much time do we have left?
We have about 10-15 minutes.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna show off a little bit, and this one was done for a client, actually, is Visa, and they wanted to help develop within some of their high potential people the notion of understanding the customers, and so they want to create basically a common role play to put their Visa people in the role of customers, and getting them thinking about customers, to learn about credit card interaction from that perspective. And so everyone knows about credit cards from a customer perspective. We want to put them in the role of being a merchant. So again, here's a sim, and by the way, you can go and you can learn about all this stuff if you want. But so you can get the didactic information if you still need it, and that's there. But I'm going to show you how this works. So this is the 4-party model. Okay, up we go. This is all about understanding the merchant perspective. So we're going to force all of these credit card people to put themselves in the role of a merchant. So in this game, in this sim, you play a restaurateur. You're starting with 3 locations. So far, you've grown with a cash and personal check only policy. Large private equity firm is going to buy you off, so you want to raise your share price. How do you evolve the business? Okay, so what can I control? At best, you can control these 6 things. You can add locations, you can add payment options, you can sort of invest in trying to figure out what customers want, you can start doing virtual business, you can expand retail options, and you can work on your branding. So at any given point, you have at most those options, but here's the way they're going to be presented to you. So here it is, your share price is $2.99, you have 5 turns left, the number of locations you have is 3, so that's sort of your card. And so right now you can, the starting move is like chess, you have less moves when you start off, is you can add another location, you can begin taking customer credit cards, you can start offering branded merchandise. And so what do you want to do? By the way, I love having a restart button if it's something like this, so that encourages people to screw around more, they can play more, they don't have to worry about it because they can always restart. Love the restart button. So okay, well, let's start offering branded merchandise. So click on that. Okay, great. So here I am going to offer branded merchandise. You can sell hats and shirts and stuff with their logos on them. They add to your bottom line, blah, blah, blah. So that's nice. So now we're doing branding. So we got rid of that option. Our share price has gone up because now I can do one more thing. Okay, I'm going to begin taking custom credit cards. So that's turn number 2. If I want legacy terminals or smart terminals, I can learn a little about this. I can learn about the merchant discount rate because this is still for Visa. So, I can learn about that, but I don't really care. So I'm going to do for smart terminals because they're a little more fun. This is what smart terminals do. Again, people care about this information when they're in a simulation. They don't care about it any other time. So, so you want to take advantage of that. Okay. So now I've opened up to options. And one of the cool things about this sim, I only have 3 turns left. I've made 2 turns, but now I still may add another location. I can start taking mobile payments. I can start offering prepackaged food because I'm doing credit cards and my branding. I can offer a website. I can track user data. So, what am I going to do now? Well, let's start offering prepackaged food. So that, that's a little more fun. So we're now offering prepackaged food as well. We're doing well now. Sorry, our share has gone up $10.28. We have 2 turns left. So what's kind of cool is this is entire business, it's actually a little more than 5 turns, but it's entire business simulation with all different kinds of implications and all kinds of thinking, but it's only 5 turns. So once again, you can always get it done in about, in about 7 or 8 minutes. So again, I could add a location, begin taking mobile payments, launch a website and take orders that way. Apply for a branded card. So I'm going to launch a website and take orders. Okay, so that's good. Back to my hub. Now I can start adding. So now again, I've opened up. It's always about opening up options. So I can still do these other things, but now I can add a food delivery option. And I'm going to have an opportunity to get a bonus turn. So I'm going to answer a customer question for bonus turn. Given 4 credit card options, which is best for your bottom line? American card face-to-face, frequent flyer, Visa card face-to-face, standard Visa card face-to-face, or pay through the website. So which ones is best for you to accept? And so again, well, it turns out websites are more expensive, so standard Visa is the best thing for you to do. So okay, so I win an extra turn, so now I have 2 turns left. I'm going to add a food delivery option. I'm going to do that one. Actually, I'm going to take mobile payments first. So take mobile payments. And now I've opened up the option of using RFID for frictionless shopping. So I can kind of create my own Amazon Go store, or I could add food delivery options. So this is my last turn. My price has gone up. I'm going to use RFID for frictionless shopping. Okay, so I've now converted that to a pretty cool thing. Excellent, actually did pretty well that time. So, and again, a couple of different things here. I use both an absolute number in terms of here's your share price, which went up. So in this case, $37.45. But it also has a star rating, which is a nice thing for a complicated sim. So you always know how you did. Is that the best I could do or not? And so in this case, I did the highest, one of the highest possible things. But again, I could have gotten 3 stars or 2 stars or 1 star pretty easily. So that's an example, and that's, you can argue that isn't necessarily a short sim. It's a shortish sim, and that's it's a little more elaborate. There's a little more computation involved, but it's something that you can push and sort of play with if you want to. And again, I would do that as an expert after you get good at the other stuff. It's not necessarily better than the short sims. In fact, in many cases, it's a much more limited approach. But it does sort of show you how you can still maintain some of the same short sim philosophies of limited interface, but doing something a little more. A little more specific. So if I were in charge if I were CLO, at this point, given what I know about the industry, I would say find a tool, there's a bunch of tools out there, get a few experts, designers, and find some appropriate content. Maybe bring in someone experienced if you want, but start creating some. And if I were you, I'd start creating, say, 3 short sims, using a right seat, left seat mentality, which is sort of the military concept, is having someone, having the expert create the first short sim with everyone else watching, and then have everyone else who was watching now start taking over the role of the short sims and having the expert watch initially, and then start ramping up. And I think when I've worked with organizations and they start with a few short sims, they get more and more and more, and pretty soon, most training organizations I've ever seen have this massive backlog of content. There's always more that they have to do, and whether they're, in the case of organizations, a lot of times, they're trying to get content out to their members. They're trying to get content out to their users. They're trying to get content out to their members' customers. It's sort of this never-ending battle. And I think once you start realizing how fast you can produce content that's really good, that's really meaningful, it changes the way they behave, and you start having a learning to do mentality rather than a learning to know mentality, the content itself becomes a lot more fun, a lot more valuable. And so, in a very short time, you can really just start producing a tremendous amount of very high value, meaningful content to your members. And I think it's an incredibly exciting thing. And you really, and also it's really fun too, because a lot of your designers, frankly, are really excited about the thought of working hard for a week and getting something out the door and then getting sort of feedback from it. So it's a much more exciting role than the 3-month slog for the giant course that should cover everything, but whatever. So it's a much cleaner model. The other nice thing about the short sim approach is that you can do, if you have to tackle leadership, you can do a bunch of sims on leadership, not just one. And so you do one, the most obvious thing, you do one short sim, and then you realize, okay, that covered 80% or 40%, but I still have more to do. Make another one and another one. You can kind of keep making more that cover different aspects to it and build up your library. The other thing you can do with short sims, which is something that's a little more interesting, is using an approach that I call TADA, which is training and data acquisition. And so what you can start doing is you can start putting little things into short sims, little open-ended questions, and you can sort of see how people do. And whenever you track sims, and again, Web Courseworks is fabulous for tracking sims through their learning management system, you can see how people do. And so you can start increasingly using short sims, not as a one-way, but as a two-way learning tool. Not only are you pushing content out to your audiences, but you're learning from your audience what they care about, what they think is important. You can have a question in terms of, let's go back to the Oracle example. You can say, what is the most important reason to, that your clients care about cloud services? Here are 4 examples. And so you can learn from them. You can say, who's the biggest competitor right now to Oracle, in your opinion? And so you can start asking people questions. And when people are in the right mood of short sims, they're thrilled to answer questions, and they answer questions quickly. So here's why I want to get back to the subject matter expert question, because it's a great question. And I'm going to argue very strongly that short sims are the first educational media type that actually meets the needs of everyone involved. And one thing it does do is it meets the needs of enterprises, because any CEO worries a lot about how do you get a large number of people to predictably do a lot of things better, and also gain insights into culture. Suddenly we can give you a real-time dashboard into your culture. So from a CEO perspective, this is perfect. This is exactly what they want to do. From a learner perspective, they're more engaging, they're more relevant, because now we're thinking about how people are using content, not just saying here's stuff that maybe you might be interested in. But also they're short and efficient, and they're fun. And so again, 7 minutes doing something engaging, great, I'm in. Maybe 15 minutes, fine. An hour going through a slide deck, I don't think so. For sponsors, the people who are actually putting their skin in the game, better results, higher satisfaction, less money, faster to produce. They can clear through the backlogs of their old content and also create updatable libraries. One of the huge reasons why I got really frustrated with more game-like experiences is because a year later, when we found little problems, we couldn't really update them in some cases because the talent that built them has gone away, and we're already starting to see that with virtual reality projects. The really important thing here is that you can create content because, and another reason why I'm using PowerPoint as my graphic engine, not just because I'm clumsy and idiotic, is because I can create a library of supporting information for any given sim that anyone can go in and change. And so this notion that if I'm seeing someone else's short sim, I can very quickly figure out what's going on and why, and I can make changes to it. So the notion of not only creating content, but updatable content. And that's the other question we talked about media. What's the problem with complicated media, or what's the negative? The negative is the stuff gets stuck. The stuff, once you create it, it's very, very hard to go back and fix it once it's broken. And so the better you do these things, the more you can fix it. But also, long way of getting to your question. It makes subject matter experts fun. They love this stuff. They would rather present things in a doing perspective, especially if you do the hard work of interviewing them. So again, if you ask a subject matter expert, what are the problems people make? What are the mistakes that smart people make? What are the mistakes that newbies make? When someone is doing this thing that you're telling them to do, what are the mistakes they make? Subject matter experts love talking about mistakes. They'll talk about mistakes all day long. They adore mistakes. Can't believe the stupid thing the person did. I can't believe it. It's so obvious. Whatever. So in most cases, and the only problem here is some academic people do think in terms a little too much of case studies, especially if someone is quite a bit removed from the actual content. So if someone has written books about the content, they may not actually have access to that information anymore, and that is perhaps problematic. But the more an expert actually talks to real people and sees real things being done in the real world, again, business school, what do people make when applying this rule to crunching numbers? Well, here are all the mistakes they make, and here's why they make the mistakes. So you can model all of those. So subject matter experts, especially the ones that have authentic knowledge, really love this stuff. And also they do take pride in the sims they make. A lot of subject matter experts show off the sims. The person whose sim I made Be the Hacker one, shows it to everyone. He's very proud of that one. And so I think it actually is something that they're all very happy about. And for developers, last but not least, this stuff is simple to debug. Not the business one, by the way, but most of them are simple to debug. We can build on past works. We don't need exotic skill. We don't need people who have a degree in virtual reality, for example. It also works within the context of classrooms. We can also embed them in other mediums. So short, and almost every other approach, from the old PowerPoint slides to game-like situations, makes some of these people happy, but some of these people really unhappy. And so again, a reason why I find this is so exciting is because it's the first media that I have found that makes all of these people happy at the same time. And basically, I like making people happy. So I'm going to suggest that if we're to fast forward 5 years, probably 25% of the educational content in best practice learning or groups will be produced using a short-term methodology. So it's not going to be 100%, but I think it's going to be significant, and significantly in about 4 or 5 time. So the cool thing about this is you don't really have to bet the farm, but you probably ought to bet a pig. You probably ought to get your toe in the water, start creating some, and then I think once you start that, you'll just see how cool they are and how effective they are. The other thing, they really start changing the role of the training group. I hate directive leadership. I hate being the boss and the expert telling you what to do. Even that's what I've been doing for the last 45 minutes. I love encouraging people. I love a collaborative leadership style that's encouraging people to be their best, not saying, "Oh, Clark, you're so smart," which is the thing you hate to hear most of all is, "Oh, Clark, you're so smart." What I really want to hear is, "Hey, Clark, I made 5 short stems and look how cool they are. And by the way, my short stems are better than your short stems." That's what I want to hear. And so, it's how do you get people to be their productive best? And so I think it does change your philosophy of content design from the expert is the expert to the learner is the person to focus on, and how do you engage them and suck them in and give them interesting decisions. Any other questions?
Yes, we have 2 more questions. The first one is, how do you differentiate in your approach when working with a client from a business environment versus a faculty member?
I think faculty members take a little more hand-holding, but I think and faculty members, again, are a bit more removed from the original content. So in some cases, that does not mean that they're not good. They're often brilliant, but sometimes you have to do a little more of the heavy working. So I did the demand curve sim that I showed you. That was based on a conversation I had with a professor, and we talked for a while about demand curves. And again, my question, where do students get wrong? What's the wrong mentality? But one thing that the professor said that stood out to me profoundly was, well, the thing that I most get frustrated with students is they look at demand curves as these icons, these fixed, static things. They don't see them as being organic and dynamic, and they also don't see them as being helpful. So people look at demand curves as something to create for their own sake, not as something that becomes a valuable tool. So I really had 2 goals when making that sim based on that person's comment, and one of them was, how do I make the notion of a more dynamic, something that's kind of created and constructed, but more importantly also is, how do I make something that people will use? The other thing regarding faculty is all faculty have some content they hate to teach. Like, here's the thing that I know I'm going to get blank looks from the classes, that this is the hard stuff, or I wish I had a lab, or I wish I had people can experiment with it and teach themselves, but labs are too expensive and they require materials. And whether it's engineering students regarding breadboards and whatever, or chemistry labs, or whatever, or even social skills, in terms of like leadership. I wish people had labs to play with this stuff. I wish people can experiment. So all of those parts where faculty have the worst topics. So one thing I like to do with faculty is saying, what's the curriculum item that you hate the most to teach, that you're going to have to bang your head against the wall. The other thing too is those times when faculty members have to spend a lot of time writing things on the board, and they spend a half hour, 45 minutes lecturing to the students, and they know for sure that all the students are going to go home and have no clue how to follow in the professor's footsteps, and they're going to they're going to be given their exercises, and they're not going to know what to do, even though the professor just explained it all to them. Those kinds of things, you can kind of create the intermediary examples where you allow the player to kind of go through and make decisions, but also almost have the do abstracted work, sort of a higher level work, to still make decisions, and have a coach there saying, no, that's wrong, and I'll tell you why it's wrong. If you did that, you'd get this instead or something. And so having a bit of handholding. So I think the degree that short sims can solve some of the faculty members' biggest problems. The other thing you can do, and I love doing this if I'm building short sims for academic environments, is create a lot of Easter eggs, or create a lot of opportunities where the faculty members can say, okay, for homework last night you did this short sim, let me tell you a couple of cool things about it, and allow them to have the role, did you notice that, blankety blank. And so give the faculty member cool little tidbits to sort of allow them to come off as being as smart as they are. The final thing is that the most important thing for faculty members, as with corporate learning, is to make it easy and straightforward. And so creating a short sim where there's no questions, it's all self-evident, everything I showed you, you can teach yourself, it's not hard. The technology itself is bulletproof. The ability to put out a short sim where the professor does not have to do anything technical, does not have to be technical support. They'll love you for it. They'll absolutely adore they'll appreciate it, and it allows them to do what they do best, which is coaching and one-on-one mentoring and to the classroom explaining a thing. So you allow them to be their best.
Okay, last question. Do you use a specific software program to do your sims?
The first 3 examples were done using BranchTrack. The last one was done using Articulate. Again, I think the functionality is, so right now BranchTrack is sort of the Apple of short sim approaches. It's just, it does things invisibly and seamlessly. Right now, BranchTrack has a Get Your First One for Free program, which I would recommend if you are experimenting with this idea, go to branchtrack.com and get the first one free and play with it. And by the way, even if you already have Articulate even if you're already an Articulate shop, I'd recommend that you learn how to do it first using BranchTrack, because it's easy and fast and organic. And then if you really have to, that's fine. Go to Articulate and now build short sims in Articulate. You can do it. The affordances will work against you in Articulate, but you can still do it. And so if you're absolutely convinced that Articulate is the right answer, which is plenty of reasons to think that, I would still do your first short sim using BranchTrack just to put yourself in an environment where you can do it quickly. Because again, the hard part is getting the feeling for it, getting the flow for it. And once you get the flow for it, once you understand it, I can work on any environment right now. And if it's a little bit more kludgy, so be it. But the important thing is that I sort of have the knowledge and conviction of how to do it. So build the knowledge and conviction and experience in basically a training wheel environment, and then go to the environment, the final environment that your organization has committed you to.
Okay, I think that's all our questions. If you have anything else to add, Clark, I think we went a little bit over, but that's always a good sign.
I'm very sorry. I do apologize. No, your time is precious.
You're good. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Clark, for sharing your knowledge and expertise about short sims. We will send out a post-webinar survey. So please answer the survey, as this will help us improve the quality of our webinars. And we will be sending a follow-up email to all registrants and attendees with a link to the webinar recording. If you have any questions, you can tweet at Clark, and his contact information is on the slides. And you can also email us at marketing@webcourseworks.com if you have any questions. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Clark.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it. Sorry I went over.